So welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Pierre and I'm the Executive Director of the Católica Lisbon Center for Technological Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So we're going to be with you today and hopefully you're going to stick with us in the next 3 sessions of July. So overall it's going to be 4 sessions. And the objective really is actually coming from a chat between friends, and we thought about sharing some of the chat we would have between us on crypto and knowing more about crypto in something more public. And that's the reason why we put together this very informal format of Crypto Thursdays, and we really hope you enjoy it. So, and after I'll get into more details. But to get the official opening of the Crypto Thursdays, I'd like to call on Professor Celine Abecassis Moedas, the academic director of the center, to welcome us and to start the Crypto Thursday. Celine, would you like to come on stage, please?
Sure, of course. Hello, thank you, Pierre. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, or whatever time it is where you are. It's a pleasure to welcome you at Católica. As Pierre said, I am the academic director for the Center for Technological Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And let me say a few words about the center and then a few more words about the initiative. So the center was created in 2018, and we're very happy and proud that we are sponsored by the Patrick and Lina Drahi Foundation. So this is what makes us live every day. What do we do at the center? We have 3 types of initiatives. On the one hand, we support research in the area of entrepreneurship and innovation. The second axe of work is teaching. So we support some teaching initiatives in the area of technological innovation and entrepreneurship. And finally, we organize events like this one, and we connect our students to the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Lisbon and sometimes even outside of Lisbon. So this is the Crypto Thursday is a new initiative that is that has been sponsored and thought and designed and delivered by Pierre. So I want to publicly thank Pierre for this initiative. And I want to thank our great speakers of today, Pedro, George, and Adam. Congratulations and thank you for your presence. And as Pierre was saying, it's supposed to be like more of a conversation between friends and more chit chat than something very formal. So I hope we can keep that feeling online. And of course, I hope and I wish that in the next few months, this type of initiative can be in person. And Adam has promised that he will do his best to fly to Lisbon as soon as he can. So welcome everybody, and thank you for the speakers, and thank you all for your presence. Have a good session.
Okay, thank you very much, Celine. So moving on to the next slide, and exactly. So how did it start, and what's the objectives for this session? So the crypto is really a brave and brand new world, okay? And we all have a lot to learn about that. So, and the objective is really to provide you with some of the, the fundamentals of crypto for you to navigate a little bit what's happening and to get your own opinion on what you can hear on the media or any other sources, okay? So for the participants, you here, and first of all, we received more than 100, applications, and we had to cut, for logistic purposes and to make it easy for you to chit chat between you and the moderators. We limited to a number of about 30 people, so it could be easier for you to talk between each other. So the objective for you is to learn about what is crypto. And perhaps that's going to be one of the objectives of this session. So you're going to get out of these sessions with more knowledge. When you want to tackle, and the second point, when you want to tackle crypto is where do I start? If I Google crypto, I'm going to have a lot of leads and what to start with, etc. So we hope that with these sessions, it's going to help you out to start and get, a good first point to grab, then second point, and build your own knowledge on that. And the third point also is, how can I do that? You know, what are the tools? What people sometimes call, you know, Bitcoins, Ethereum, other things, you know, Ledger. We're going to provide you with some knowledge about the and basics and fundamentals about the buzzwords, so you know what you can do. Okay, so that's some of the objectives for you participants. And us, and just to a little bit rectify what Céline mentioned, is that all the content is coming from Pedro and George, and basically on that, and the people that we're going to invite today, we have Adam, and we're going to have other guests along these sessions, is we want to know how we can improve the sessions. So we are looking forward to hear from you guys to get some feedback and tell us how we can improve that, and eventually, if it would make sense to have other sessions in September or October, etc. So your feedback is very important for us. Okay, so having touched that, moving to the next slide, which is, yeah, this one exactly. So how did we put that together? So we split it, this kind of the knowledge in 4 sessions. So it's going to be 4 Thursdays in July. So the last one is today, next one, and the last one will be about the 29th. It's going to be about 40 minutes, perhaps a little bit more, depending on the question and the interests. Okay, but it's going to be recurring. And we really encourage you to be in all the sessions, because the knowledge and perhaps the difficulty or the detail will go increasing. So if you miss one of the sessions, it's going to be kind of difficult to get up to speed for the next one. Okay. We will share all, and as you can see, we ask you for your authorization to be recorded. We're going to share that on YouTube, so you will be able to go even deeper and review the sessions if you want. Okay, so where how is that going to happen? It's going to be on Zoom, so it's going to be always the same link that you have here. So it's going to be a recurring link, and as I mentioned previously, it's going to be on YouTube, and we're going to be sharing the location. Okay, how are we going to be doing that? We're going to be doing that in English. So far, it has a very thick French accent, and after it's going to change to other accents, but we believe that to make it perhaps easier and broader, we should be doing that in English, and we'll continue doing that for the next session. We're going to be touching, we're going to be touching 2 topics every Thursday, and after I'll have George, Pedro, and Adam discussing that after. And really the format, and we believe it's an added value. It's not throwing knowledge at you. It's really sharing information and getting feedback and discussing on that. Okay, so it's really a type of fireside chats and question and answers. And we hope that you love it and actually you learn from that. So, and moving to the next slide, what I would like to do now is, having put the logistics aside and having, you know, started the session with Céline, I'd like to introduce, you know, the 2 people behind the Crypto Thursday. So it's Pedro and George. Pedro and George will be with you in each session, and after we're going to have you know, special guests for other sessions, but they will be with you on each session. And perhaps I'd like now to share, for them to share with you their background and their interests, so you know them better. So before I pass on perhaps to Pedro first, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope it's going to be a smooth ride and you enjoy it. Please provide us with feedback so we know how to improve that, and eventually have other editions. So thank you again, and I'll pass on to Pedro. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Pierre. So again, welcome all. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are. Adam is in Singapore and he's quite far away, and it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon for him. So big thank you for staying up late in order to talk to us. There's a chat for those of you that know Zoom. If you don't, there's a chat, you can use it. I'm going to be your juggler for today. So what does this mean? It means that I'm going to try and do a little bit of master of ceremonies. I'm going to try and moderate a little bit the conversation. I'm going to say a few things as well, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat. And if you have any comments or questions that you might want to see addressed, please shoot them away in the chat, and I'll try and make sure that they get into the flow of the thing. If not, you can wait till the end and you can ask it in your own voice if you wish, or you can use the chat if you're shy. That might also be the case. But nevertheless, this is a controlled environment, and we did it on purpose to have the audience kind of on the smallish side. And we're running an experiment. We're not hiding it. This is an experiment, and we encourage any feedback that you might have. Who knows what's going to happen after this sort of 4 Crypto Thursdays. We will probably have a nice vacation in August, and then we'll come back in September. And who knows how we're going to do this, if we're going to do this, in which way, shape, or form. We would like to keep it up. Crypto is one of my passions. So we're counting on you to run this experiment with us. There's no silly questions, they're just questions. And actually, this is one of the things that we sort of thought about it when organizing this. There's a lot of things about crypto over there. There's a lot of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There's a lot of weird things. The topic sits at an intersection of finance and technology. Finance can be a hard thing. Technology can be a hard thing. Finance plus technology can be even worse. So this is the practical approach that we're trying to sort of get to you over these 4 sessions. So a couple of words about myself very quickly. I spent most of my life in enterprise IT. I've worked abroad, mostly big multinational companies, American ones, and mainly in sales, business development, and alliances and partnership roles. Today, I'm a business angel, and I'm also investor in residence at Católica, and I also lecture there. And crypto, as I was saying, is something that I really like. A few words about yourself, George?
Yeah, sure. My career is, as you can see, not as extensive as Pedro. I was a student of Católica not so long ago. I did both my master's and bachelor there. I taught finance for the undergrad course, and I've been all my life on the banking consulting side of jobs, and currently I'm a consultant for the Boston Consulting Group. And in the crypto world, I'm mostly an investor, but I also participate in some projects when I can, including Adam's project, Subex.
Great stuff. And today we have a special guest, which is Adam. Adam, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is Adam, and I'm from Singapore. It's not 12 p.m. It's actually 12 a.m. in Singapore. Everyone's sleeping. It's super dark in Singapore. I'm here. I'm brought on to this session today to give my inputs as a developer in the blockchain space. I've been a developer here for approximately 4 to 5 years. I've took multiple contracts over the years, and I started a crypto blockchain startup a couple months ago that has managed to sustain $1 million market cap in just a couple of weeks. So I'm really happy and excited to share more about my insights, and it's going to be a fireside chat. When I'm presenting and sharing, if you guys have any questions, do not be afraid to just type in the chat and I'll address it. Thank you.
Great. So before we dive right into it, what this is not, okay? Expectations. This is not a plan to get rich quick. So there's no point in ordering the Ferrari with the weird paint job. This is not what we're shooting for. This is not a crypto trading course. And by the way, there's a lot of truth to this graph that you can see here. Sometimes it goes really, really high, but then as we're all under the effects of something called the laws of gravity, what goes up also goes down, and sometimes with a big splash. So this is not a trading thing. We're on to the concepts and sort of try to understand what's behind. And this is not the conventional class. So there's not going to be evaluations, exams, homework, study, whatever. You do whatever you want. You ask whatever you want. You can do a lot of things on the side. YouTube and the internet are your friends. You can prepare and come with the questions for the next sessions. That's all very fine. But this is not a conventional class. There will not be slides. There will not be anything of that sort. So with that understanding in
Here,
mind,
just to add one thing on you, Pedro, as it is not a conventional slide, we are also counting on your intervention to make this interesting. Because all of the topics we are going to talk about today, Adam could talk about the technicalities for days, and me and Pedro could give opinions for hours. But if you let us know where your doubts and we can create some nice discussion, that's how I think we will all take the best outputs out of this. So if you have any question, feel free to send it in and to stop us.
and some of you might even know more about the topic than we do, which is also fine. Come forward and help us. You'll be most welcome. So let's get going with it. So in the beginning of times, there was the financial system, and then there were computers. The financial system is the financial system. It's a domain of expertise, so to speak, that's been developing incredibly throughout the past century and something. It forms the basis, the societal basis of how we relate to each other in terms of transactions, commerce, money, and all the assorted things. And then we have technology. Okay, and technology also comes in mainly in the last century. Let's put it like that. Huge developments over there, and technology is a tool. It's nothing more than a tool. And I'm somebody with a background in engineering, but it's a tool. That's what it is. It helps. It leverages. It does things faster. It does things a little bit differently, and it makes it possible to do things which, if you do it by hand or with common human knowledge or speed, are not possible. When you merge the two of these together, you have something which is happening in many other sectors, which is called digital transformation. And when that happens, usually there's digitalization that is happening. And there's also decentralization or disintermediation, if you will. Okay. So when something gets to be simpler, there's also a decentralization and a reduction in the number of intermediaries that you need to have along the way to make sure that things work. Things are more and more done by machines. You don't need so many people in between to make sure that it flows correctly. And then suddenly the first actor in the value chain can speak to the last actor in the value chain. They can establish a direct relationship, and technology makes all of this possible. So there's no witchcraft or anything of the sorts here. There's a financial system, and the financial system has a very, very well-known set of topics, issues, problems, incentives, all of that. And then there's technology that somehow changes the way that we're able to sort out these issues and things that happen in the financial system. There is one thing which is absolutely critical in the financial system. And if you would ask me, I would rank it first place with my eyes shut. It's called trust. If you have no trust, there's nothing. Okay. And it's really, really important to be able to trust the person you're doing business with. And you will see that this is a recurring topic as we dive a little bit into the financial system with technology, and that makes it sort of crypto-like. We'll go to what does that mean in a second. But the trust is the cornerstone of all of this. The motivations are all the same as the financial system. There's nothing new happening in crypto that does not already happen in the financial system. Every time you see something coming up in the crypto world, most probably, if not all the times, it has an ancestor in the old ways of doing business in the financial system. Okay, so that's one of the notions that I wanted to live it out there. Regulation, it's another very serious thing because it's financial system and there's such entities called governments, and there's always the potential for misplaying the financial system. There's also a very, very big role of regulators on how things get done and what is allowed to be done and what is not allowed to be done. This is not very different than other sectors. There is one thing which is true, and I don't know if there's anybody from the regulator who's present, but usually the regulators lag behind what happens in the real world. It happens in the traditional financial system where you get all sorts of weird mechanisms, which then have unintended consequences. For example, the economical crisis of 2008, that was one instance. And then regulators always struggle to get onto this sort of thing. If you mix it with technology, because the level of complexity goes up, that's even truer. But the regulator role is there, and sometimes it's very, very welcomed. Okay, it cannot be the Far West where everything's allowed, everything's possible. Sometimes there's a little bit of a tension in between these extremes, and that's why we have situations which seem sort of weird. Adam, George, do you guys want to add anything to this?
I think you went quite complex. I would just add that on the regulation on the government side, this brings additional points that in the traditional financial sector we don't see, and that comes a lot from the decentralization. And it's a big fear that you can see that the governments have. That is, if you do not have a central party, if you don't have a Caixa Geral de Depósitos, a bank that you can say, please froze that person's funds. If your funds are on a decentralized network, there is no place the government could give the order to froze your funds, for example. And this is another source of new regulation, new topics that we are not used to deal with, that are arising and that are coming in. And that will be defined in the next couple of years, but are not at all defined now. And we don't even see a parallelism with the existing markets.
All right, I think that was a brilliant introduction for both of you. I will continue to share on the technology behind blockchain in the further slides. Thank you.
Great. Illustrating George's point, if you lose the password for your crypto wallet, we will get to there. Not today, but probably in the next session. There's nobody that you can call in order to retrieve the password. That's it. You're done. Okay. That's one of the wonders of decentralization. There's another side of this, which is it's a private thing. It's your thing. But if you run into issues, there's nobody else to call for help. So have that in mind. There's three key concepts that come very, very much hand in hand at this point of time. One is money, which is necessary to understand how the whole thing stands. The other one, it's the ledger, which is what allows us to keep track of transactions. You can think of this as a ledger, as in accounting, as in a record, as in a database, as in everything that you want, okay? But it's a record of what happened. which is very, very useful when you're registering transactions, so that then people cannot say, no, he didn't pay me, or she didn't give me the goods, or whatever. And then there's something called cryptography, and we'll go into that in a second. And basically that's where the name comes from. Crypto comes from cryptography, because as you introduce technology into this, this is one of the key methods by which you can guarantee that transactions actually happened, and have happened how they were recorded, and that they were not tampered with. Okay, but let's move ahead quickly. Money is basically a convention, okay, and there's tons of bullets that you can find if you go into the theory of economics about what money is and what is not. But basically, you can boil it down to three very basic things, okay? One is unit of account. In other words, I'm able to put a price or a quantity of money, whatever that is. It could be seashells, it could be dollars, it could be drachmas, it could be whatever, it could be Bitcoin, for all that it's worth. But it allows me to sort of put a price tag in all the goods that I'm trying to transact. In other words, if I'm selling you my car and I'm saying that it's worth 20,000 euros, for example, then you have a unit of account for that car. So if we're trying to do a direct exchange, as in, oh, I'll trade my car for yours, how much is your car's worth? 40. Okay, so mine's worth 20. So in order for this to be a deal for both of us, a balanced deal, I would have to give you 20. Okay, so this is what it means, a unit of account. You can sort of match a price tag to something, and then everybody speaks a common language. The other one is medium of exchange. Okay, so you exchange money. I exchange money with you, you exchange money with me, and a store of value, as in the sense that if I don't feel like spending money now, I need a place to keep it and spend it later. So as simple as that. These would be the three very, very basic concepts about money, which will be useful moving forward. George, any comment?
I think here we can think, and from what we all read about crypto on the news source that we have, that some of these things are clear that is possible to do. For example, with Bitcoin, it's clearly possible to change it from one person to the other with a high reliability and high trustworthiness. Clearly, Bitcoin is measurable. You can measure it. It's 1, it's 2 Bitcoin, it's 3 Bitcoin. The big doubt here, and the big critics that say, and when I say critics, even some of them are supporters of the blockchain technology, just not as money. The big point of controversy is the storage of value, because as we know, all the cryptocurrencies have huge deviations, market to market, daily deviations, and we can all, most of us work in businesses, we can all think, how hard would it be to manage a business that from one day to the other loses 50% of its treasury value? Or how good it would be if it grows up 50% in a day. But we can all understand the challenges that there is to manage a business if your unit of account has this type of volatility. And this is the big divergence, and of these three main criteria, the one that clearly is not at the moment being satisfied by cryptocurrencies.
Right. Just another small comment here. George was talking about volatility.
Mm-hmm.
You can say that that Bitcoin has high volatility, but you can also look at it from the other side of the mirror and think, oh, this dollar is very volatile. It keeps on changing its quote to the Bitcoin. It's an interesting idea. Just keep it in the back of your mind. So today,
very good point, Pedro.
Today, yeah, I mean, The relationship varies in between the two, fine. What is varying? Is it the first party or the second party, or both of them? You can find quotes, for example, on exchanges for Bitcoin versus Ethereum. One crypto coin versus another crypto coin, and the graph varies, and they're both volatile. So just another example. But let's head on and go for the ledger. So the ledger, as I was saying a couple of minutes ago, it is the most important thing that you can think of in a transaction system. And it takes several forms. It could be these old books, which are very nice, but incredibly difficult to manage, especially if you're doing transactions at scale. And they're not very safe because you can always tamper with the values. You can make mistakes and then you correct, but then what happens? So there's really the need for a unified source of truth that will actually record in front of everybody that person A has done this transaction with person B, it occurred on this date, and this is the amount of money that was exchanged. So this is precisely what we're going to focus on today. It's the ledger, and the ledger in crypto world is nothing but the blockchain, okay? Which, by the way, it's a technology that can be applied to a lot of other domains. It does not have to be strictly applied to the financial system. But this is a very important concept, which is what happened here, did it happen? And let's make sure that people cannot repudiate transactions, okay? In other words, say, no, it didn't happen. So this is the importance of...
Can I just add one thing on the
Yes,
previous?
please.
If we all think about it, all our lives today are in ledgers. Your bank account is not a stack full of cash. It's a number on an Excel sheet or whatever database you're thinking that it is in the servers of the bank. Your points in continent are not in the card, they are data. Your birth certificate, your national health system receipts, all of that is information that is stored in centralized ledger that you use on your day-to-day life, and we don't even think about it. But we are always using and connecting with information that's stored in ledgers, usually through centralized providers, being it the bank, being it Continent, being it Facebook. But all our lives today is recorded in ledgers. I think it's a good reflection to have when we are going deeper into this technology. That's mostly a different way of doing a ledger. That as of the moment, we already interact with this type of systems all the time.
Cool. Crypto. So why on earth is this topic called crypto? Because in this ledger of ours, there's a lot of cryptography technology, which is actually what makes sure that that ledger that we're all looking at, it's a single source of truth. In other words, it has not been changed, it has not been tampered with, it happened as it's described, and we can trust it. So we go back to the point of trust that we started with, okay? What science comes to rescue here when it's time to do these sort of things? Cryptography. How do we encrypt? How do we make sure that encrypt, not in the sense of I'm going to try and hide something. I'm going to try and make sure that if this thing happened, then the people that did it are in fact the people that say that did it, okay? And that it really happened on that date, on that time frame, and that's what happened, okay? So cryptography is used to make sure that it's not changeable. Somebody comes later and changes it at its own pleasure, or tampers with the transaction, or whatever it is. So we use principles in cryptography in order to make sure that this happens. And there's a lot of things that go on here. We are not going to go into the details of where cryptography comes in. Adam will be sort of slightly touching on this, but for the time being, let's stick with the idea that this is made possible through the use of cryptography, and we'll make sure that this is the source of truth. So what is the blockchain? And I'll hand over to Adam very quickly, but there's a couple of concepts that I wanted to talk about here. It's a blockchain because it's a chain of blocks, literally. And these blocks record information or transactions. For example, in Bitcoin, there's a new block which is being generated every 10 minutes. And it's in these blocks that we store the transactions or the information. Let's not talk just about transactions, but let's talk about information, because we can put an NFT in there. Stay tuned for session 3, which is where we'll address this topic. We can put whatever we want in there, okay, inside each one of these blocks. The nice thing with these blocks is that we organize it in a chain, and we calculate a very complex mathematical function on top of this block to make sure that all the information that it's in there, it's true. That's called the hash. Okay, it's the holy hash. Everybody's always looking for the hash. The hash is nothing but a very complex mathematical function that is worked on top of every block to make sure that that block is unique. And as Adam will tell you, each block has the hash of the previous block and has its own hash. So like this, we're able to say, I'm block 134 and I come right after the previous block. And because the hashes give us a way to validate that they're unique, it's what allows us to make sure that nobody has switched blocks on the blockchain. Okay, this process of calculating the hash is called mining, which again is a very interesting concept that goes on everywhere, where people say, "Oh, we're mining Bitcoin." What does that mean? We're hunting for Bitcoin. We're digging for Bitcoin. No, we're calculating stuff. We're using computers to calculate mathematical functions on top of blocks. That's what we're doing. And we get rewarded for this. Go on, Adam.
So it's a little secret of mine, but mining has been really popular in the last couple of months, right? In fact, I have 5 machines running in a factory, some corner in Singapore, that is actually mining Ethereum. So as what Pedro has mentioned, this machine actually do computational sequences in exchange for Ethereum tokens, right, that you can sell on the open market. So I think that was a really nice prelude into this conversation. Pedro, do you want me to continue sharing more about the blocks?
Let me just touch on one thing, which usually people get very worked up with. It's the green part, and I want to get that out of the way. Okay, so this process of mining, as Adam was saying, there's an incentive for this. If you mine, you get rewarded by the network, and they give you money or tokens or whatever it is that you can then sell and convert into money. But there's one thing that people usually get very worked up with this. It's a process that consumes a lot of power. Okay, it is true. It's a very electricity hungry process, but mining in itself is a business. In other words, if electricity is expensive, then you will not make a lot of profit. And what happens is that usually most of the mining rigs that you hear about work on solar power or wind power or mostly renewable power, which is cheaper than power generated through other methods. And they most of the time provide the critical mass to the system that makes it more efficient and economically viable to use renewable energies in these areas. So be mindful that it's a half true to say that mining consumes a lot of energy. It does. But then go and check out where that energy comes from. I'm not saying that this is not true, that this is not a power hungry process. It is. But you need to look things. Life is usually not black and white. There's a lot of shades of gray in between. And you need to make sure that you understand what you're doing and where it comes from. So don't look at it as, no, this thing is evil. But go right ahead, Adam. I think it's a very nice segue into your part.
Sure, thank you. So the story of how I found out about Bitcoin was in 2016 when a research hacker of mine, of a good friend of mine who works at a research hacking firm, actually told me that, hey, there's this currency that's going around where, you know, people are using it to transact over the internet, right? And I looked it up and I was amazed, right? I was looking at the technology that drives cryptocurrency, the blockchain technology, and I was so amazed. And I bought my very first Bitcoin right there and then. And the next day, I tried to explain to my mom, "Hey, mom, there's this internet money going around," and my mom was like so confused. She was like, "What magic internet money? What's going on?" She has no clue, right? And that was when I realized that, hey, okay, there's a very interesting opportunity to go and learn more about blockchain, because back then myself, I wasn't too sure as well. I took the time to learn more about blockchain and eventually became a developer, and I've been working on multiple projects ever since. So everyone always knows that Bitcoin, Ethereum, they run on the blockchain network, but not a lot of people actually know why is it called the blockchain. So as Pedro previously mentioned, how the cryptocurrency blockchain network stores data is in blocks, in very nice blocks. Next slide, please. So in each block, it actually stores the transactional data of the network. For example, if I'm sending some money to Hugo over there, or Luis or Pedro, right? The amount that I have sent to them will be recorded along with my wallet address as well as Pedro's wallet address. It will be stored in a block. And something that is interesting and unique, something that helps to secure the network is that each block has its own fingerprint. It's called the hash. This prevents people, every time there's a change in data, the hash will change as well. What this means is that the moment the data is set in the block, it cannot be changed, because the moment anything is changed, the hash will change as well. So how this block lines up together is that each individual block will also contain the fingerprint of the previous block, forming a long chain. The moment, if any malicious actor tries to make any changes within the data in the block, it will be rejected by the network, because there is a system of check and balances, of checking, next slide, please, of making sure that the hash in each blocks are in sequence, meaning if I block 1 and it has hash ABC, block 2 will actually have the record that block 1 is actually hash ABC, basically a linking of all the blocks together, making it extremely improbable for a malicious actor to make changes, keeping this network secure. Next slide, please. All right, and as previously mentioned, if a malicious actor, if let's say one day I try and reverse a transaction, or I'm trying to steal some tokens or currency from Pedro, or George, or Lewis, I will be immediately shut down by the network. The network will say, hey, this is an invalid hash. What you're doing is incorrect. This transaction will not go through. So that's how blockchain technology fundamentally works, right? Storing data in blocks, chaining them together to ensure that they cannot be tampered with, and they will reject any transaction that are malicious. Next slide, please. And there's the word of ledger going around, and what this means in the blockchain network is that when you transfer money to someone in a bank, the bank keeps the record of how much you own, as well as the next guy, your family, your members. The bank has a central ledger. Only they know what's going on. We do not know what's going on the back end. And for better or worse, depending who you ask on the different side of the coin, there are pros and cons. How it works on the blockchain is that every single person that is contributing to the network actually has a copy of the ledger. So instead of a central body of, let's say, a bank approving a transaction, whenever I send $5 to George, everyone in this room will actually look in their ledger and help to verify that transaction. They will record down that, Adam has sent $5 to George, and this information will be stored in a block. What this means is that as more people join the network, this network gets increasingly more secure because there are more check and balance in the network. Next slide, please. Right, and every single transaction that goes on will be added into a block and added into the blockchain. And thus the blockchain is a ever-ending list of blocks and data that's accumulated over time. Next slide, please.
Yeah, different usages here for blockchain, and I'll start with one straight out of Adam's examples. Who put your hands up if you have your camera on? Who from you has ever requested a loan from a bank to buy a house? A couple of people. Have you ever seen the money? Me neither. Never, ever. So what happened was that your bank, the bank that told you that they would lend you the money, they have a ledger, their own internal ledger, where they've recorded that you or me or whoever owes them X amount of money. But I have never seen that money in my life. I don't know if it exists or if it doesn't exist. They just recorded the debt. And I'm obliged by law to pay them what was contracted originally, which is an amount of money, which is capital plus interest every single month for, in my case, 30 years. And the money has never materialized itself. There's a ledger somewhere in there. And I sort of wonder every now and then, what if somebody goes into that bank's record and says that it wasn't X amount of money, it was 2 times or 3 times or whatever? What happens then? So this is one of the practical usages of blockchain. If you can make sure that nobody can touch that, and that is true, because that corresponds to a transaction that happened, to a common agreement in between myself and the bank, that's how I want it to be immutable in the ledger or the blockchain. Other examples where you can apply this: diplomas and Católica's diplomas, or certificates or certification or whatever you want to call it. Whenever somebody gives you a driver's license or says that you've graduated from university or whatever, if there is a certificate involved, you can use a blockchain to make sure that that certificate is real and it corresponds to something that happened, and that person is entitled to have that certificate. Art is another example. I want to buy this painting. I want to make sure that this is authentic. Who can prove that to me? Second-hand cars, for example. Oh, no. This car is very nice. It only had one previous owner, and it didn't do practically no miles. And then you go and you find out that there's 20 registrations for that same car. So I want this to be possible, to be looked at, public information, and I want to check out that that car was sold 20 times previously than being sold to me. Okay. Vaccines. Did this person actually take this vaccine? Yes or no? Yes, he or she did. Fantastic. No, they didn't. So these are all sort of applications for blockchain that do not have exactly directly to do with the crypto world, in the sense that we talk about Bitcoin and trading and this and that. But it's a technology again that runs on the distributed computer, which is a network made up by nodes from everybody that participates in this network. And the bigger it is, it makes it a lot more safer. And that what again guarantees that this is a single source of truth.
Right. If I may add on to that previous slide,
Please.
Pedro. Right. So I will be sharing a perspective in Singapore. So the Singaporean government has been really receptive to blockchain technology. And in fact, my diploma and my degree are all taught in the blockchain, right? The universities that and the colleges that I've been to have started storing all of our diplomas or certificate on the blockchain. A couple of years ago, there were scandals around Singapore where our talents that we hire overseas, they actually come with fraudulent certificate, and that became a really huge problem in Singapore. So immediately after, a couple of months later, there are a lot of vendors that were bought on by the government to make sure that this problem will not exist again. And the solution that came out with it was to actually store our certificate on the blockchain. So right now, if I would want to proceed to get hired by an employer, I would actually have to send them a certain blockchain files where they are able to cross refer to the blockchain, the different blocks on the blockchain, to ensure that my certificate is valid. So there are already real world applications for the blockchain. Some countries, some organizations might take a little while to implement them because perhaps the population is huge, the infrastructure is huge. It takes time to actually make modifications to infrastructure. But for a small country like Singapore, we are able to do it really quickly. And that's, I think, really cool. And I can't wait to see what Portugal have in store for you guys. Right. So as previously mentioned, there are a lot of there are problems that could be potentially solved by the blockchain, the centralization of storage, the ease of modification, like what Pedro and George mentioned, right? It might take some guy that doesn't like you in the bank to change your bank account to zero, and there's very little recourse you can do about that because all of the data, they are stored in a centralized ledger, right? There is a lack of transparency, and there is a critical failure in security where all of your data is stored in one centralized location or server. So next slide, please. And the blockchain can help to alleviate these problems by making storage decentralized, making it really difficult, close to impossible or improbable to have malicious changes to the data on the blockchain. It's secured and it's transparent. All transactions in the blockchain are transparent. They are there. If you know the public address of a particular person, you are able to look up their entire history. So of course, this might lead to some privacy concern, and there are a lot of solutions out there to go along to mitigate this problem. I think maybe this could be shared in the later sessions. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Right, so as previously mentioned by Pedro, there are a lot of applications, and oh, sorry, this slide before that would be great. Thank you. Yep, there are a lot of applications in healthcare and vaccination data in real estate. So in blockchain, you're able to upload contracts called smart contracts onto the blockchain. And in Singapore and the ASEAN region, this has been taking off in property as well, property transaction. Everything is dealing through the blockchain. The moment, the buyer of the house of the property confirms that everything's in order, the payment can be released automatically through smart contracts on the blockchain. It can be used in supply chain management, especially in verifying counterfeit goods. In China, in Vietnam, there are a lot of counterfeit goods coming out of these countries in the last 20 to 30 years. And one way that we can help to, put a close watch on that is by actually having products verified on the blockchain, meaning that in the future, your Louis Vuitton handbag that you purchase could have a barcode inside where you can scan it and verify it on the blockchain that it comes from ethical and proper manufacturer. And of course, payment systems like Bitcoin. Next slide, please. Right. So when everyone thinks about the blockchain, the first thing they think of is payment, right? Distributed ledger for cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Litecoin, and even Dogecoin, different form of payments, right? And we have talked about, having other use cases in healthcare, in video games, and in smart contracts. So I think there are a lot of potentials and using blockchain technology, and that's why I decide to be a developer here. I think the team has more information and more details that's coming up, like NFTs and different kind of use cases in the coming sessions. Next slide, please. All right, and before that, is there any questions that anyone want to ask, right? I do not want to be just presenting slides all day. If there are any particular questions right now, or if anyone has any query, I'll be more than happy to answer. Yeah, and if you do, don't be afraid to just drop the message in the chat, and I will promptly reply to that question. Moving on to
let me just tell you something, Adam.
Sure.
Somebody put in the chat that this would be great for the European Union funds, which are coming, in order to understand where the money comes from and where the money is going to go to, which is actually a very nice usage for a blockchain. And I cannot resist making the comment. There are people that do not like so much transparency.
I was going to literally say that, Pedro, that a lot of criticism you get of the crypto markets, you get on one side is too opaque, but on the other, oh, it's not good for banks because you need our privacy in the data. So you have both extremes and people will criticize both.
So what Adam was saying is actually very, very true, in the sense that if you know a wallet's address, you can go right now into the blockchain and find out what happened to and from that wallet. Okay? You go and you check it out. And we'll talk a little bit about frauds and illegal activities as well as we progress, but there's nothing more transparent than blockchain in this sense. Okay? Go ahead, Adam.
Right. So I see a couple of questions, right? Do I use solar panels in my mining process? So I started mining quite a while back. I own 4 big rigs. They are around probably 10,000 euros each, and I put it in a factory. So in Singapore, electricity here is pretty it's all right. We actually this factory actually do have solar panels. It's actually a green factory. So we try our best to stay sustainable, to help the process of, making sure that this whole environment and ecosystem is sustainable. And there are a lot of news recently, right, in China, and a lot of countries actually banning cryptocurrency mining with environmental concerns. And these concerns may very well be true, especially where the country is heavily reliant on, for example, traditional source of organic fuel, right? Perhaps petrol fuel, perhaps charcoal, coal that could be damaging to the environment. So I think there is a huge conversation right now about how we can make this technology even more sustainable. And there have been a lot of progress. So Bitcoin functions on mining, right? You got to physically use electricity to verify transactions. And there are a lot of new systems that have been developed in the last 10 years where, the amount of electricity needed to do this is significantly reduced. So I think as a whole, as a technology, the technology has been evolving, trying to make sure that this is a much more sustainable process. Bruno has asked a really interesting question. Since Bitcoin relies most on the cost of energy, can we assume that the fair price of Bitcoin is the average cost of energy that's needed to mine one Bitcoin? That's a really good question. So a lot of people think that, you know, Bitcoin is magic internet money. There's zero inherent value to it. And that is fundamentally false, because the lowest fundamental value of a Bitcoin is the amount of energy it takes to produce one, right? So this number actually ranges from time to time. So I'm not able to give you an exact number now, but for argument's sake, let's say that Bitcoin, in order to generate one Bitcoin, it takes maybe $5,000 to $8,000 worth of electricity, right? So that's like the fundamental value of Bitcoin, right? If you sell it at, if Bitcoin goes to $1,000 or $2,000, then people will not mine Bitcoin anymore, because, you know, it's more expensive to mine Bitcoin than to actually to mine Bitcoin. The Bitcoin is such a low value. So there's a huge argument online saying that Bitcoin at its very least has a fundamental value, and that's a very good question, Bruno.
It's value based, it's not cost based. So nobody's paying you for the work that you do. They're giving you a reward for the function that you're doing. Then it's your issue or your problem to go and trade that into fiat currency. And if the price is nice on that day, you get more. If the price is down on that day, you get less. But it's not indexed to the cost of what it takes to produce that good, if I could make it like that.
Right. I agree. There is actually a maximum limit of Bitcoins in the world, and there can only be 21 million Bitcoins ever produced in the world. So at some point of time, no one else can produce Bitcoins anymore. And that's why there are a lot of speculations on the price of Bitcoin, right? A reducing supply and an increasing demand makes all the economists really happy, and everyone starts to buy Bitcoin. That's why we see that there are a surge of interest and pricing in the cryptocurrency space. Whether it's speculative or whether it's justified, time will tell. Is the blockchain unlimited? I see that's a really interesting question. So there are different kind of technologies of the blockchain. Some blockchain technology allows you to have unlimited amount of blocks, right? There are a lot of caveats with that as well, because where you have unlimited amount of blocks, that's a huge amount of data to be stored decentralized in a decentralized manner, right? Corporates like Amazon, Microsoft can spend thousands and millions of dollars having high capacity servers. But when you're actually trying to distribute terabytes of data across multiple people, like in the blockchain, that gets increasingly more difficult. So there are a lot of new technologies that have been developed to help to ease this pain. And I think these technologies can be touched on more in the future. Luis has mentioned there's a clear tension between two sides, government, big institutions, centralized bank. Regarding this, do you think there will be a consensus between this party, and how could this be reached? In Singapore, at least, sorry, I know I'm using Singapore as an example because I live in Singapore, so I think it's quite cool for me to share like a global perspective with you guys, and maybe you guys can share with me the perspective in Portugal, Lisbon, and in Europe, what you guys are doing. The government has taken a very nice stance towards crypto, and in the big banks in Singapore has already started to adopt crypto technology into their processes. There are a lot of cryptocurrencies as well that help to bridge this gap between the traditional finance model and the finance infrastructure and the blockchain. And I think this will continue to develop, and we will see how well that turns out. I would say that the government, at least the Singapore government, realized that blockchain technology could really be something huge in how the country's finances are being run, and I think they are looking into it. There are a lot of regulations, there are a lot of research being done for good reasons, right? Because a technology like that, you have to be careful. You got to do your research, and I think over time we will see more and more governments adopt blockchain technology. In fact, we recently found out that one country around the world has accepted Bitcoin as legal tender. So I guess in the eyes of people who are enthusiastic and bullish about blockchain technology, that's a huge win.
Complementing a little bit what you're saying about this topic, Adam, I would leave you with two additional ideas. One is for the crypto market to really be widely adopted, it is necessary regulation. Most investors are not willing to put a significant part of their portfolio in an unregulated market. They want the government to be there to enforce the contract, to guarantee that if your wallet is stolen, you can go to the cops and say, somebody hacked my PC, help me get that money back. And that is something that is necessary for the market to eventually grow and to a lot of these utility tokens to be more widely used. That is why regulation is needed. On the second aspect, we are seeing a lot of governments trying in different ways to regulate it. So I don't think there will be a consensus, but I will see several tryouts across countries like the Singaporean model, which is focusing on the technology, the El Salvador model, which is focusing on the currency, the Portuguese model, which is quite ignoring that it happens while just keeping the regulation for the big players.
Thank God. Thank God.
In Portugal, as long as you're an individual investor, there is absolutely no regulation that applies to you in this market. It only starts to apply as soon as you are a company that has certain criteria. And different countries are trying different methodologies, and one of them might be then widely adopted. But I think we are very, very far off from then. If you guys are curious about this, especially, Luis, there was a Congress session in the US where the new SEC chair, he was saying that it does not understand the double standards for you to create a S&P 500 ETF and not to approve a Bitcoin ETF. And he was there saying, no, the ones before me, this is clearly double standard, because if you currently allow GameStop to be traded, it is more volatile than Bitcoin. It is more clearly, you see a group of internet people influencing it, and Bitcoin is much higher market cap, 600 billion. You need to be very, very rich to influence that price. It is at the moment technically secure, because we've talked a lot about security, and usually if you think on a normal corporation, and I did in my professional life some projects about this, the bigger the corporation, the higher the security risk, because the more attractive the target is, the more weak spots you can find on an employee, on a router that is not well programmed, whatever. So more money you need to spend on security. On a cryptocurrency, it is the opposite that happens. Is the biggest that coin, that currency, that crypto token will get, the harder it will be for you to attack it technically. And you'll see that on the types of hacks that are known. But for you to be able to even think on controlling the Bitcoin network, you need to be already one of the richest persons in the world. So as long as, while smaller coins, you say, oh, it's worth 200 million. Yes, with some millions well placed, you might be able to target that token. But we've known, and if you guys are more familiar with finance, there were 2 decades ago, it was very cool for European billionaires to go speculate with Asian currencies. And they did that because they were small. But in Bitcoin, the defense is much larger as soon as you get bigger. There is, at least from my perception, is a very low risk of a targeted network attack on any of the largest currencies, because the amount of money you need to invest on the system will leave you so exposed to that currency that after the attack, your net worth would be smaller.
Guys, I just made a note that we need to make a session on regulation, which is a nice one for September. Let's move ahead. Otherwise, we're going to get into seriously dinner time schedules. Not to mention very, very deep night schedule for Adam. So let's move it forward. There's still a couple of interesting things to talk about, especially on the security side. So go ahead, Adam.
All right, next slide, please. Thank you, Pedro. Right, as previously mentioned, the blockchain technology can be used to verify counterfeit goods. Next slide, please.
Oh, this one's mine.
Just nice sizing with no questions as well. All right, Pedro.
Challenges. This is not perfect, people. there's a couple of things that are also that need a little bit of work. Scaling up, the bigger the blockchain becomes, the harder it gets to manipulate. Okay, more data needs to flow around. How do you do a software update, for example? Just a couple of small things, small big things, if you will, that are actually important. So how do you do a software upgrade and make sure that every node in the network is running the same software if there's no central custodian or orchestrator for that network? And another one is network speed. How many transactions can you process per second? So if you think about what is going on, for example, today at the big payments processors like Visa and MasterCard and all these people, there's billions of transactions going on because there's millions literally of people swiping cards every second that goes by and paying for things and all of that. The network needs to be able to scale and to actually process those transactions in a timely manner. But go ahead, Adam. Go into the details of the thing, please.
All right, thank you. That's a good explanation, Pedro. Especially in terms of scalability, right? I think the fact that you bring up our modern payment processors like Visa and MasterCard, where they handle millions of transactions, there are, for Bitcoin, for example, it's struggling to keep up, right? There are a lot of people transacting on the Bitcoin blockchain, and it has been chugging along trying to keep up the cost of transaction and the Bitcoin network, and the waiting time as well has since been increased. So in order to solve this problem, there must be software updates, there must be infrastructural change, perhaps a change in consensus system to help Bitcoin process more payments effectively. And in fact, this advancements has already been seen in other tokens as well, right? In Ethereum, they have moving to the proof of stake system with sharding that allows them to handle more transactions per second. And Dogecoin and Litecoins, these are some popular coins that have been, especially Dogecoin that has been in the news recently. These coins are able to handle way more transactions than Bitcoin.
Adam, can I just add one point here that I think most people are not familiar with? When we talk about updates, there is normally behind the smaller currencies, like the one Adam is currently developing, there is a team in the beginning that is more or less responsible for the currency. But Bitcoin, nobody knows who found it. Like, these are teams of developers that need to gather the consensus of the community who holds this currency to be able to change the network. So all of these changes that you say, Ethereum is doing a change. It's only doing a change because the people who hold Ethereum, the people who mine Ethereum, gather the consensus and say, we are going to do this change. And they are able to gather all those amounts of inputs because it's secure that if you put your token some way and you vote with your tokens, that's really your vote. So all the governance model, and we'll get that on a later stage, is decentralized. Any of you could learn how to program in blockchain, could propose an Ethereum modification that made sense, the community can approve it, and it will be like that in the future. Just this point, Adam, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, exactly. So I participated in a development vote for the Ethereum network once a couple of years ago, and it was a experience similar to what George just mentioned, right? Someone actually proposes a change and then everyone votes on it. And if that happens, there will be developers that work mostly pro bono to enact these changes. So moving on to the slide, one of the challenge of blockchain is that it allows one of the advantages actually is that it allows payments across borders, and sometimes this can be abused by malicious actors and doing illegal activities, right? Drugs, even the most disgusting, which is possible terrorism financing, right? It's absolutely disgusting, and thus the government watch this space a lot, right? There might be a lot of regulation, there might be a lot of red tapes in order to promote its further adoption. And I think this is one of the issues where it has to be eventually resolved because if you know there are a lot of transaction illegal activities going on the blockchain, it's going to hinder the usage and the adoption of like real world benefits. And I think recently there are a lot of crackdowns as well. The government has increased efforts to try and prevent and protect people from actually falling for fraud on the crypto blockchain network, and to minimize and disrupt terrorism financing on the blockchain. And I think in time, of course we are not able to eliminate this, but in time to mitigate and lower this to low levels where regulation and adoption can take place much more comfortably. And as Bruno mentioned, a very good question, Bruno. You've been asking really fantastic questions. That since transactions have to be validated in the mass adoption of blockchain, would there ever be a point where it's not viable to process many transactions anymore? And that's one of the problem that the blockchain has, right? Speed inefficiency, especially when you have huge amount of transactions going to go through. And that's why there are always continuous innovations in the blockchain space in order to make this, to allow more transactions, faster transactions, cheaper transactions in the blockchain. All right, next slide, please.
So just one thing that I wanted to say regarding illegal activities. There's nothing more anonymous than a bag stuffed with dollars. Okay, there's no tracking for that. And illegal activities, it's an issue of human behavior. It's not an issue of crypto or Bitcoin or whatever. There will always be illegal activities anywhere that you go, by human nature, period. So it's not, it might have this aura of being good for illegal activities because a lot of people do not know what it's about. But that's the only thing. The rest is human nature at work, people. We need to deal with it. Go ahead, Adam.
All right. So as George mentioned, there are I think George has made a really good example where the larger a network or crypto network becomes, the harder is it to actually perform malicious actions in the network. And how malicious actors can actually hurt the network is by performing what is known as a 51% attack. So in the blockchain, permission is distributed around a network, a peer-to-peer network, where whenever a transaction takes place, it has to be validated by people that are currently mining on the network. In the event where a really rich, really malicious actor managed to accumulate 51% of the mining power, it is possible that he might be able to rewrite blocks, might be able to make transactions disappear, double spend his credits, and attack the network. And this has been done before in smaller tokens. A coin Verge was attacked in 2018 multiple times like that, and thus there were a lot of financial loss, right? Attacks like this for bigger currencies are almost impossible, very improbable, because the amount that's needed to actually, the amount of money that's needed to get so much of this mining power outweigh the rewards from actually hacking or attacking the network. Correct, it will be cost efficient, exactly. So smaller tokens are vulnerable to 51% attacks, and that's why we have to be really careful as well. And more over time, technology has been improving to mitigate this possibility of the 51% attack. And I think we have been making really, really good progress in the last 3 years. Next slide, please. Right, a surveil attack is something similar. I will not go too much in it for now, as I think we are running out of time. Next slide, please. Right, so it's important when we actually, as a developer and as all developers in the blockchain space, it's really important where we actually build the network with security in mind, to have proper cryptography, proper security, to ensure that it's decentralized and it's not controlled by a central body, and to have tokenomics, crypto economics, to make sure that the network makes sense, where miners and people who secure the network are properly compensated in order to keep the network secure. Next slide, please.
It's the wrap up. That's what it is. It's the wrap up. And if I may, so what we've discussed today, it's blockchain. A little bit of intro to the crypto world, financial system plus technology, and then one very specific topic, which is blockchain, which is the foundation for the rest of the stuff that we're going to address in the remaining sessions. I'm just going to open up a little bit of the veil for the next session in terms of currencies. We'll be talking about Bitcoin, and we'll be talking about smart contracts. So in other words, it's cryptocurrency as it is, okay? And you can think of it basically as you're creating your own world, your own financial world. So in other words, let's say Vanya, for example, decides that she wants to own a coin, okay? And you name it, you call it Vanya, for example, you name it after yourself. And you create the rules for this coin to exist and to be exchanged amongst people that live in this universe. And that's why Adam was saying you need to have the guarantee that people are who they say they are, that they transacted as they said that they transacted. You need to make sure that there's a ledger to register all of this, and you need to make sure that there's an incentive system so that in the grand scheme of things, it happens like you wanted it to happen. Let's put it like that. Some people in the chat were talking about burning or printing coin. It's actually an interesting thing that we can go a little bit in deep more in the next session, because today what you see in the fiat world, fiat, by the way, for those that do not know the acronym, it's old school currency like dollars and euros and all of that. So anything that is not crypto.
Or
You
gold,
have,
Pedro.
so, or gold, yeah. So you have governments like the United States government, which is printing dollars like never seen before in history of times. So as they print, that means that there's more tokens in circulation, and it should cause inflation. Let's not go too much into the economics and the theory behind it, but you have an entity which is printing tokens like crazy. On the other hand, you have Bitcoin, for example, which has a limited amount of supply of tokens, like it's 21 million. By algorithm, mathematical function, there's not even one more that can be produced. That's it. And there's other tokens where actually they burn tokens every day or every hour or every period of time that they choose. And that, as time goes by, introduces scarcity in the system. Okay, so it's all about making sure that the rules are there so that it can flow and work together. What we've seen today is the basis of that, which is blockchain. So go ahead, George.
Finish, Pedro. Finish. I was just adding some other point.
Yeah, we're finished today. So now it's questions and answers. I just want to say one thing, and somebody pointed out to me. The typical car for the crypto world, it's not the Ferrari, it's the Lambo. The car that was on the picture was a Ferrari.
Yes.
So we could not find a Lambo with an outrageous enough paint job on top of it to put here in the slides. That's why we refer to it as a Ferrari. But then again, the typical one, it's the Lambo. Go ahead, George.
The guy from the Ferrari is being sued at the moment by Ferrari to take the car back because they don't want it to be on the street with their branding on the back. And actually, if you have enough money to buy a Ferrari, you also sign a contract where you say that you don't mess up with their brand. And he's been for a few times fighting Ferrari on the courts for his right for the Dodge in his car. This is just a curiosity. But the point I wanted to add on you, Pedro, is this is really, really just the beginning. When we look at tokens today, there are tokens with intrinsic economics within them. And we'll be developing on this and say every transaction you do, there is a small burn rate to create deflation. Some tokens, just by holding them, every transaction that happens, they will distribute a small fee from that transaction to all the people that are holding, creating an automatic interest rate that you receive just by holding some tokens. You have the possibility of smart contract allows you to create any type of financial instrument that you want. And you don't need the bank between you and the other contraparty of the financial instrument. You just need to know how to read the contract. You write it, you send it to someone who knows how to read it, and you can accept it and be sure that that's how it will happen. And that is, I think, the blockchain is just the basis for how that happens and the things that we are going to talk on the next sessions.
Right, questions. We have one in the chat. Will there be a chapter about Elon Musk and what he's doing to the community? Well, we hadn't thought of it. We only have 4 sessions. We can talk about market manipulation somewhere in the middle of this. But it's no different than what's been happening for a very long time in the non-crypto world. Rockefeller used to say that company's good, and so that people would go and buy stock from that company, which, guess what, he had a vested interest in there. So it's people, this is not different in any way, shape, or form to what already existed a long time ago. It's amplified by technology. It's communicated by social networks, and the reach has nothing to do with what the reach used to be. That's the main reason.
The players are not similar. I think that's the...
Yeah, and suddenly everything's global. And just because somebody sends out a tweet, it can shoot the price of the stock to the moon, or crypto, or down, or whatever it is. So we've got another question. How do you store 2 simultaneous transactions, and what is the size of each block in the blockchain? Adam, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. It really depends on which kind of network you're on. For example, Bitcoin on average stores around 500 transactions per block, and each block is around 1 MB in size. So there are some other cryptocurrency that are able to scale this much better. They could have up to 10,000 transactions per block with a much lower block size. The problem comes with that if you store more transactions per block, the network inherently gets a little bit less secure. So it's a trade-off, whether sometimes it's a trade-off, whether it's about more security or more convenience and more transaction per second. Of course, there are more technologies that are currently being developed to make sure that, it can process high numbers of transactions per second and it remains highly secured as well. But I hope that answered your question.
So another thing that I wanted to say on that topic, you might have heard lately, the Chinese government has been kicking the miners out of the country, and there's a lot of crypto mining that has been taken apart in China. I'm not going to go into the reasons why that is, but when I was talking about the incentive system, when you design the incentive system, you need to account for these types of things. So in the case of Bitcoin, what really happened was then when the hash power came down, because there were miners that were being taken offline, the algorithm from Bitcoin actually adjusted and was made easier automatically by the algorithm itself in terms of adapting to the available hashing power. So when there are more miners on the network, the algorithm will automatically become more complicated in order to account for that effect. So there's a lot of gaming theory going into this. There's a lot of incentives theory going into this. You need to make sure that you have a system that actually adapts and balances quite a few variables, and it is able to sort of live through all these possible changes. Oh, we have more miners in the network. What do we do? Oh, we increase the complexity of the algo. We have less miners. We reduce the complexity. Oh, we have more transactions. What do? We do it like this. Oh, we have less transactions. We do it like that. So it's like a living entity. It must, if it's gonna work, it needs to adapt to this type of changing environment. Any more questions? Fantastic. You've been a great audience. You've put up with us for 1 hour and 35 minutes. Adam, you're not going to sleep much today. I'm sorry for that.
It's all right. It's a pleasure being here today. Thank you, everyone, for the attendance.
And thank you very much for logging in and sharing with us a little bit of knowledge. Please make sure that you give us all the possible comments and feedbacks that you think what we should do, what we shouldn't do. We're quite thick-skinned, so it's fine. You can critique.
And if you have any suggestion topics that arise from you for the next 3 sessions, let us know, and we can try to at least touch them in the sessions.
Yeah, and let's meet next Thursday then.
We will have Adam back again with us, not next week, but the following week to talk with us about the other topics.
Great.
Right.
Take care.
Guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. I've added my LinkedIn in the comments as well. If you're free to connect, if you have any questions regarding development, blockchain, or decentralized finance, I'll be more than happy to try and answer your questions. Thank you, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Bye.